We've all gotten into an argument over the meaning of a word before, right? But what if that argument actually landed you in court? Well, that is exactly what happened here, in a case where a homeowner's entire legal fight against their HOA came down to the definition of a single, super common, everyday word.
So, how in the world does one little word escalate into a full-blown legal battle? Let's dive in and unpack this whole thing, because it tells us so much about the surprisingly complicated world of legal language.
All right, let's meet our players. On one side, we've got homeowner Victor L. Pattarozzi, and on the other, his homeowners association. Now, this fight isn't over something you might expect, like, an overgrown lawn or a weird paint color. Nope, this is about something way more fundamental, transparency.
And this is where it all gets really interesting. You see, the law is super specific. It says all board meetings have to be open to owner homeowners. But for committee meetings, there's this little catch. Only the regularly scheduled ones have to be open. And that one phrase, that's what this entire case is about.
So what does regularly scheduled even mean? Does it just mean a meeting that follows the rules? Or does it mean a meeting that happens on a fixed, predictable schedule? That one question is what turns this from a simple disagreement into a legal showdown.
The HOA's argument was pretty straightforward. They basically said, look, our architectural review committee doesn't have some fixed schedule. They don't meet, every Tuesday at 7 p.m. sharp. Instead, they just get together whenever they need to, only when there are actual applications from residents to review.
And you can kind of see their point, right? I mean, in all of 2019, they only got 12 applications total. And most of those were for really simple things that got approved without even needing a big discussion. So if they held a meeting every single month, a lot of the time, they'd just be sitting in an empty room.
But Mr. Pattarozzi, he was not buying it. He was convinced that regularly meant something else. And to prove his point, he brought in a really surprising piece of evidence, the dictionary.
He actually presented two key definitions for the word regular. The first one suggests it just means something that's done according to established rules. But the second one, the one we probably think of more often, suggests something that happens over and over at fixed times, like a weekly appointment. As far as Mr. Pattarozzi was concerned, the meeting should be open to him under either one of those definitions.
So now the judge has this problem. You've got two different definitions for the same word in a single law. How do you possibly decide which one is right? Well, it turns out there is a whole legal toolkit for exactly this kind of situation.
It's a process called statutory interpretation. And it's not just about what a word can mean. It's really about figuring out what the lawmakers actually intended for it to mean when they wrote it, inside the context of the entire law.
And in this case, the judge's toolkit had a few key rules of thumb. First, you use the ordinary, everyday meaning of a word unless the law tells you otherwise. Second, and this one is the real game changer here, every single word in a law has a job to do. And third, you can't just go adding words that aren't there.
Okay, so let's see how the judge actually used these rules, starting with that first definition, the one that says regular just means following the rules. Well, it turns out there's a huge problem with that one.
Just think about it for a second. If the laws said committee meetings that follow the rules must be open, that would be a completely pointless sentence. I mean, all meetings are legally required to follow the rules. So, with that definition, the word regularly does absolutely no work. It's redundant. And according to that principle, give every word a job, that just can't be the right answer.
So, if that first definition is a dud, what about the second one? The one about something happening at fixed intervals. Well, this one, the judge found, fit perfectly.
And here's why. This definition gives the word regularly a very specific job to do. It creates two different kinds of committee meetings, the ones with a fixed schedule, which have to be open, and the ones that are held as needed, which can be private. All of a sudden, the word has a real purpose. It's not just filler. And with that, the judge reached a conclusion. In the context of this specific law, the phrase regularly scheduled means meetings that happen over and over again at fixed, uniform times. And since the HOA's committee only met when they needed to, their meetings just didn't fit that legal definition. So, just like that, the case was decided. The HOA hadn't broken the law. Their meetings weren't regularly scheduled in the legal sense of the term. The whole thing was over. And it all came down to that one single word.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, it's kind of like a crash course in how to read legal language. Every single word is there for a reason, and a single adjective, like regularly, can be the difference between a rule that applies to you and one that doesn't.
It's a powerful reminder that laws are built with incredible, sometimes frustrating, precision.
And that kind of leaves us with one last question. Think about everything from your own HOA rules to the endless terms of service you click agree on. How well do you really understand the words that govern your life? This whole case shows that what you think a word means and what it legally means, well, they can be two very different things. It really makes you think, doesn't it?